The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. I sat in a plastic chair, my daughter sleeping in her stroller beside me, and stared at the paperwork in my hands. Official. Legal. Terrifying. This wasn't how I imagined motherhood. Sitting in a police station at 9 in the morning, filing a criminal complaint against my daughter's father. But here I was. The officer behind the desk looked tired. She'd probably heard 1,000 stories like mine. But this was my story. My reality. And it was about to explode. "So he claims the child isn't his?" she asked, not looking up from her computer. "Yes. Despite being present during the pregnancy. Yes. And he refuses to pay child support. He says he won't pay for a child that isn't his." She finally looked at me then. Really looked at me. And I saw something in her eyes. Recognition maybe. Sympathy. The understanding of one woman who knew what men were capable of. But she is his. She's his daughter. I have proof. Medical records. Text messages where he acknowledged the pregnancy. Photos of us together when I was pregnant. Everything. The officer nodded slowly. "And you're filing this complaint because?" "Because he's lying. To avoid responsibility. To avoid paying what he legally owes. And I want him held accountable." My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd been shaking for weeks. Ever since the court hearing where he stood up, looked the judge in the eye, and said those words that changed everything. "Your Honor, I have reason to believe the child isn't mine. I request a paternity test before any support order is issued." The courtroom went silent. I felt everyone's eyes on me, judging, wondering. The single mother who maybe didn't know who her baby's father was. But I knew. I'd always known. There was never anyone else. Just him. Only him. And he knew it too. That's what made it so cruel. He wasn't questioning paternity because he genuinely doubted. He was using it as a weapon. Delay tactic. A way to humiliate me publicly and avoid paying support for as long as possible. The judge ordered the test. We had 60 days. 60 days where I'd have to prove what should never have needed proving. 60 days where he got to play the victim, telling people I was trying to trap him, that the baby might not even be his. 60 days of my daughter existing in legal limbo because her father was too selfish to do the right thing. But I wasn't going to just sit there and wait. Because what he did wasn't just wrong. It was illegal. Filing a false paternity claim. Perjury. Fraud. Whatever the legal term was, it amounted to the same thing. He lied under oath to evade financial responsibility. And that was criminal. The officer typed something into her computer. "When was your daughter born?" 8 months ago. "And when did he first claim she wasn't his?" 3 weeks ago. At the child support hearing. Before that, he acknowledged her. Texted me about her. Was for photos. Even visited once when she was 2 months old. The officer's jaw tightened. She'd heard enough. "Okay. We'll need copies of everything. Text messages. Photos. Medical records if you have them. Any communication where he acknowledged paternity before suddenly claiming he didn't. I have all of it. I'd spent the last 3 weeks compiling evidence. Screenshots of every text message. Photos with timestamps. Medical records showing he was listed as the father. Witnesses who could testify that he'd claimed her as his daughter. Built a case. Because I wasn't just a scorned ex-girlfriend. I was a mother protecting her daughter from a man who thought he could lie his way out of responsibility. The officer handed me a form. "Fill this out. Be as detailed as possible. Dates, times, exact quotes if you remember them. The more evidence you provide, the stronger the case." I took the form, my hands finally steady. This was it. The moment where I stopped being a victim and became someone who fought back. My daughter stirred in her stroller, made a soft sound, then settled back to sleep. She had no idea that her father was trying to erase her existence. That he'd stood in a courtroom and denied she was his. But she'd know someday. And I wanted her to know that her mother didn't let him get away with it. I started filling out the form. Every detail. Every lie. Every moment he'd acknowledged her before deciding it was more convenient to pretend he hadn't. The officer watched me write. When I finished, she took the form and read through it carefully. This is good. We'll open an investigation. What happens next? We'll contact him. Get his statement. Compare it to the evidence you've provided. If there's enough to proceed, we'll forward it to the prosecutor's office. And then it's up to them whether to file charges. But based on what you've told me and what's documented here, I think you have a strong case. He nodded. Felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Not yet. But hope. The possibility that justice might actually exist. How long does it take? Investigations can take weeks, sometimes months, but you'll be notified of any developments. Okay. I stood up, gathered my things, checked on my daughter. Still sleeping, peaceful, unaware. The officer stood too. Extended her hand. Good luck. I hope this works out. Thank you. I pushed the stroller toward the exit, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. I crossed a line. This wasn't just a custody battle anymore. This was criminal, and there was no going back. But as I walked out into the parking lot, sunlight hitting my face, I realized something important. I didn't want to go back. I was tired of being the one who suffered while he walked away unscathed. Tired of watching him lie without consequences. Tired of my daughter being treated like she didn't exist because acknowledging her meant accepting responsibility. So I'd done what I should have done weeks ago. I'd reported him to the police. And whatever happened next, at least I could look my daughter in the eye someday and tell her, I fought for you. When your father tried to deny you existed, I made sure the world knew he was lying. That night, lying in bed, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard you went to the police. My heart stopped. Another text came through. You're going to regret this. I stared at the phone screen. The words glowed in the darkness of my bedroom. You're going to regret this. My hands trembled. Not from fear exactly. From rage. From the audacity of him threatening me after everything he'd done. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot instead. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. Another message came through. You think you can drag me through the mud? Ruin my reputation. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. I wanted to laugh. What kind of person was I? A mother fighting for her daughter. A woman who refused to let a man lie his way out of responsibility. That's what kind of person I was. But he didn't see it that way. To him I was vindictive. Bitter. A scorned woman using their daughter as a weapon. The messages kept coming. My family is furious. My mother wants to talk to you. You're destroying my life over nothing. The test is going to prove I'm right anyway. That last one made me pause. Test. The paternity test we were scheduled to do in 2 weeks. The one that would prove beyond any doubt that he was lying. Part of me wondered if he actually believed his own lie. If he'd convinced himself somehow that there was a chance she wasn't his. That would almost be easier to stomach than the alternative. That he knew the truth and was lying anyway. My daughter made a sound from her crib. Soft whimper. I set down the phone and went to her. Lifted her gently. Felt her small body curl against my chest. She was warm. Real. Your father is a coward, I whispered into her hair. But you don't need to worry. I won't let him hurt you. She didn't understand. Wouldn't understand for years. But someday she'd ask questions. Why doesn't Daddy visit? Why doesn't he call? Why did he say I wasn't his? And I'd have to find words that explained the inexplicable. That some men run from responsibility. That love isn't always enough to make people stay. That sometimes the person who should protect you is the one who hurts you most. But I'd also tell her that her mother fought. That when he tried to erase her existence, I made sure the world knew he was lying. I put her back in the crib, watched her settle back to sleep, then returned to my phone. The messages had stopped. Now. Opened my contacts. Found my lawyer's name. It was late, But I knew she'd told me to reach out anytime if he contacted me directly. I typed out a message with the screenshots attached. "He's threatening me. What should I do?" The response came faster than I expected. "Don't respond. Document everything. If he continues, we can file for a restraining order. This kind of behavior only strengthens your case." A restraining order. Against my daughter's father. The man I'd once loved. The man I'd imagined building a life with. How had we gotten here? I thought back to when I'd first told him I was pregnant. We weren't together anymore by then. The relationship had ended badly, full of fights and resentment and the slow realization that we wanted different things. But when I saw those 2 lines on the test, I knew I had to tell him. Whatever had happened between us, he deserved to know he was going to be a father. I'd met him at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. My hands had been shaking when I said the words. "I'm pregnant. It's yours." He'd gone pale. Didn't speak for what felt like forever. Then quietly, "Are you sure?" "Yes. There hasn't been anyone else." He'd nodded. Asked practical questions. How far along? When was I due? What was I planning to do? "I'm keeping the baby," I'd said firmly. "Okay. I'm not asking you to get back together. But our child deserves to have a father." "I know." He'd seemed overwhelmed but not hostile. Scared but not cruel. We'd agreed to figure it out together. Co-parenting. Support. Doing what was best for the baby. For a few months it had worked. He'd come to 1 ultrasound appointment. Asked how I was feeling. Even helped me move some furniture when I was getting the nursery ready. But after the baby was born, everything changed. He visited once. Held her awkwardly for maybe 10 minutes. Then made an excuse about work and left. After that, nothing. No calls. No text. No interest. When I finally filed for child support 3 months later, that's when he showed his true colors. First, he tried to negotiate down. Said he didn't make enough money to pay the state guidelines. I provided proof of his income. He made plenty. Then he tried to claim I was being unreasonable. That I was only doing this to punish him. I pointed out that child support wasn't punishment. It was his legal obligation. And when neither of those tactics worked, he went nuclear. "I don't think she's mine." 5 words that changed everything. The judge had looked skeptical but ordered the test anyway. Standard procedure. But the damage was done. Everyone in that courtroom had heard him question my daughter's paternity. Had seen the implication that I'd been unfaithful. That I was trying to trap him with someone else's child. The humiliation had been crushing. Walking out of that courthouse, feeling every eye on me, knowing people were whispering, judging, assuming. But worse than the humiliation was the clarity. He didn't doubt she was his. He knew. He just didn't care. And he was willing to lie, to destroy my reputation, to deny his own daughter, all to avoid paying a few $100s a month. That's when I decided to go to the police. Because lying in court isn't just wrong. It's illegal. And if the system wouldn't hold him accountable, I'd find another way. My phone buzzed again. Another message from him. "My lawyer says what you did is harassment. You're going to lose custody." I almost laughed. Harassment. Filing a legitimate police report about his perjury was harassment. But denying his daughter's existence wasn't. The gaslighting was almost impressive. I didn't respond. Just took another screenshot and sent it to my lawyer. Her reply was immediate. "He's panicking." "That's good. It means he knows he's in trouble. Don't engage. Let the process play out." I set down the phone and walked to the window. The city was quiet this time of night. Street lights casting long shadows. Occasional car passing by. Normal life continuing while mine felt like a war zone. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. Before the pregnancy. Before him. Before all of this. She'd been naive. Optimistic. Believed that people did the right thing. That responsibility mattered. That fathers stepped up. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder. Sharper. Someone who knew that sometimes doing the right thing meant fighting dirty. That protecting your child meant being willing to drag their father into court, into police stations, into the harsh light of accountability. I didn't regret becoming this person. But I mourned who I used to be. My phone buzzed one more time. Last chance. Drop the police report and we can figure this out privately. I stared at the message. This was it. The moment where I could back down. Take the easy route. Let him off the hook in exchange for some vague promise of cooperation. But I thought about my daughter. About what I wanted to teach her. About the kind of mother I wanted to be. And I knew what I had to do. I blocked his number. Then I went to bed, finally allowing myself to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight, at least, I'd won one small victory. I'd refused to be intimidated. And that was enough. 2 weeks passed in agonizing silence. I went through the motions of daily life. Feeding my daughter, working my remote job, attending to the endless tasks that motherhood demanded. But underneath it all I was waiting. Waiting for news from the police. Waiting for the paternity test appointment. Waiting for something to shift in this nightmare I was living. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I just put my daughter down for her nap when my phone rang. Unknown number. My heart jumped. Hello. Is this speaking? A woman's voice. Professional. Official. Yes, this is she. This is Detective Martinez from the Family Crimes Unit. I'm calling regarding the complaint you filed 2 weeks ago. I sat down. My legs suddenly felt weak. Yes. Thank you for calling. I've reviewed your case and the evidence you provided. I'd like to schedule a time for you to come in and give a formal statement. We have some follow-up questions. Of course. When? Would tomorrow work? Say 2 o'clock. Yes. I'll be there. Perfect. Bring any additional documentation you might have. Text messages, photos, medical records, witness statements if available. I have everything organized. Good. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, feeling a strange mix of vindication and dread. They were taking it seriously. This wasn't going away. But that meant it was real. Official. There would be consequences. Called my mother. We'd been talking more since all of this started. Our relationship had been strained for years, but shared crisis had a way of forcing people together. They're investigating, I told her. I have to give a statement tomorrow. Good, she said firmly. He deserves whatever happens to him. I'm scared, Mom. Of what? That I'm ruining his life over this. That maybe I should have just let it go. Let it go. Her voice rose. He stood in a courtroom and denied his own daughter. He's threatening you. He's lying to avoid basic responsibility. You're not ruining his life. He's ruining his own life. I knew she was right. But guilt has a way of creeping in even when you know you're doing the right thing. What if this backfires? What if somehow I end up looking like the bad guy? You have evidence. You have the truth. That's all you need. After we hung up, I checked on my daughter. She was still sleeping, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. I watched her for a long moment, drawing strength from her existence. This wasn't about revenge. This was about accountability. About teaching her that when someone wrongs you, you don't have to accept it quietly. The next day, I arrived at the police station with a folder full of documents. My lawyer had helped me organize everything into a timeline. Every text message, every photo, every piece of evidence that proved he'd acknowledged paternity before suddenly claiming he hadn't. Detective Martinez was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led me to a small interview room and offered me coffee, which I accepted gratefully. Let's start from the beginning, she said, opening a notebook. When did you first inform him you were pregnant? I walked her through the entire story. The pregnancy announcement. His initial reaction. The months where he'd seemed involved. The sudden distance after the baby was born. The child support filing. The courtroom moment where he'd denied paternity. She took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. How many ultrasounds had he attended? Had he been present at the birth? What exactly had he said in court? Did I have witnesses to any of his acknowledgments? I answered everything as precisely as I could. Gave her names of friends who'd heard him refer to himself as the baby's father. Provided the pediatrician's records showing he'd been listed as the father at the first appointment he'd attended. And the paternity test, she asked. Scheduled for next week. And you're confident of the result? 100%. There was no one else. He's the father. She nodded, making another note. Has he contacted you since you filed this complaint? I pulled out my phone and showed her the threatening messages. She photographed each one with her own phone. This is harassment, she said flatly. And it undermines his credibility significantly. What happens now? We're going to interview him. Get his side of the story. Compare his statements to the evidence you've provided. What if he lies? Then he compounds his problems. Lying to police during an investigation is a separate offense. She closed her notebook and looked at me directly. I want to be transparent with you. Cases like this are complicated. Proving intentional fraud versus genuine doubt can be challenging. But based on what you've shown me, the acknowledgments, the sudden reversal, the timing of his claim, I think there's enough here for the prosecutor's office to consider charges. What kind of charges? Potentially perjury, filing a false legal claim, fraud. Possibly harassment given these messages. It depends on how the prosecutor wants to proceed. I felt something loosen in my chest. Validation. Someone in authority was taking this seriously. When will you interview him? Within the next few days. We'll contact him and request he come involuntarily. If he refuses, we can compel him. He's going to say I'm making all of this up. Let him. We'll compare his story to the documented evidence. One of you is telling the truth. The evidence will show which one. After the interview, I walked out into the afternoon sunlight feeling both lighter and heavier. Progress had been made. But the war was far from over. That evening my phone rang. My lawyer. I just got a call from his attorney, she said. They want to settle. Settle what? Everything. Child support. Visitation. They're willing to acknowledge paternity without waiting for the test results. I felt my mouth fall open. Why? Because they know he's about to be interviewed by police. And his lawyer is smart enough to realize that the police investigation makes his client look guilty. They want to make this go away before it gets worse. What are they offering? Standard guideline support. No visitation demands. Basically, they're capitulating completely. And the police investigation. That's not something they can negotiate away. That's criminal, not civil. Even if you settle the family court stuff, the police investigation continues. Thought about it. This was what I'd wanted originally. Him acknowledging his daughter. Paying support. Taking responsibility. But something in me had changed over the past weeks. It wasn't enough anymore. He'd humiliated me, threatened me, lied about our daughter in open court. And now he thought he could just throw money at it and make it disappear. What do you think I should do? Yes. Honestly. Take the settlement. Get the support locked in. Let the police investigation proceed separately. You can have both. I can. Yes. The settlement resolves the family court matters. The police investigation addresses the criminal conduct. They're two different tracks. I thought about my daughter. About what mattered most. Financial support for her needs. And accountability for his actions. Okay, I said finally. Draft the settlement. But I'm not dropping the police complaint. I wouldn't expect you to. That night I felt something shift. Not victory exactly, but progress. He was backing down, admitting paternity, agreeing to support. The police investigation would continue regardless. And whatever came of that would be determined by the evidence, not by our settlement. I checked my phone one more time before bed. No new messages from him. His silence felt like surrender. I went to my daughter's room, watched her sleep and whispered, "He can't deny you anymore. You're real. His. And now everyone knows it. Outside, the city hummed. Life continued. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight I'd won something important. Not revenge, but recognition. The beginning of justice. And that was enough. For now it was enough. The day of the paternity test arrived with a weight I hadn't anticipated. Even though I knew the outcome, even though I had zero doubt about the result, there was something humiliating about having to prove what should have been obvious. I dressed my daughter carefully that morning. A little outfit with flowers. Made sure her hair was brushed. Stupid details that didn't matter but somehow felt important. Like if she looked perfect, the world would see how wrong he'd been to deny her. The testing facility was clinical. Sterile. A waiting room with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. I sat holding my daughter on my lap while we waited for our appointment. She was 9 months old now. Starting to babble. Pulling herself up on furniture. Growing into a person with her own personality. The door opened and a technician called my name. I stood, adjusted my daughter on my hip, and walked in. The process was quick. Painless. A swab inside her cheek. That was it. 3 seconds of sample collection to prove what I'd known since the moment I conceived her. And the alleged father? The technician asked. He's coming separately, I said. Court ordered. She nodded, no judgment in her expression. She'd probably seen this scenario 1,000 times. As we left, I passed him in the hallway. He was walking toward the testing room, eyes fixed forward, refusing to acknowledge us. Stop. Look at her, I said quietly. He didn't. She's 9 months old. She has your eyes. Your smile. Look at what you're denying. He kept walking. Disappeared into the testing room without a word. I stood there for a moment, my daughter in my arms, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger anymore. Something closer to pity. He was going to miss everything. Her first steps. Her first words. The way she laughed when she was tickled. The way she reached for me when she was scared. All because his pride was more important than his daughter. I walked out into the parking lot and sat in my car for a long moment before starting the engine. My daughter played with my keys, oblivious to what had just happened. To the legal battle being fought over her existence. Results in 7 to 10 business days, the technician had said. 7 to 10 days until the truth became official. Until he ran out of excuses. That evening my lawyer called. How did it go? Fine. Quick. We should have results next week. Good. I also have news about the police investigation. My heart rate picked up. What kind of news? They interviewed him yesterday. He gave a statement claiming he had genuine doubts about paternity because you'd mentioned an ex-boyfriend during your pregnancy. That's a lie. I never mentioned anyone. I know. But that's his story. He's saying he only questioned paternity because he had legitimate reason to doubt. Can he prove that? That's the problem. It's his word against yours. Unless there's evidence that disproves his claim. Thought frantically. My medical records. I told the doctor at my first prenatal appointment that he was the father. No mention of any doubt or any other possible father. That's good. I'll make sure the detective gets that. What else did he say? He denied threatening you. Said the text messages were taken out of context. That he was just expressing frustration. Frustration. He said I'd regret going to the police. I know. But without explicit threats, it's harder to prove harassment. I felt frustration building. So he just gets to lie his way out of everything. Not necessarily. The detective said his story has inconsistencies. And once the paternity test comes back positive, it's going to be very difficult for him to explain why he questioned it in court if he supposedly knew there was a possibility all along. What do you mean? If he genuinely doubted paternity, why did he acknowledge her for months before the court hearing? Why did he text you about her? Why did he visit? His behavior doesn't match someone who had real doubts. I understood what she was saying. His story might work on paper, but the timeline of his actions told a different truth. So what happens now? We wait for the test results. Then the detective will have concrete proof that he lied. That changes everything. 7 days later, the envelope arrived. I held it in my hands, staring at my name printed on the label, knowing what was inside but terrified to open it anyway. My daughter was playing on the floor, stacking blocks. I sat down on the couch and carefully tore open the seal. The language was technical. Probability of paternity, genetic markers, statistical analysis. But the conclusion was clear. The alleged father cannot be excluded as the biological father. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I read it 3 times. Let the words sink in. Official proof of what I'd always known. He was her father. Undeniably. Scientifically. Legally. I took a photo of the document and sent it to my lawyer. She responded immediately. Perfect. I'll file this with the court today. The child support order will be finalized within a week. I sent another copy to Detective Martinez with a simple message. Test results. He lied. Her response came an hour later. Thank you. This significantly strengthens the case. I'll be forwarding this to the prosecutor's office with my recommendation. That evening, I sat with my daughter and showed her the paper. She grabbed it with her chubby hands, tried to put it in her mouth. I laughed and pulled it away. This says you're real, baby. Your daddy can't pretend anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. I saw the results. I'm sorry. I stared at the words. Sorry. After everything, that's what he had to offer. Sorry. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry didn't undo the months of denial. Didn't erase the humiliation of the court hearing. Didn't repair the damage he'd caused. Sorry was just a word he thought would make this go away. Another message came through. I know I messed up. I was scared. Can we talk? Scared. He was scared. Of what? Responsibility. Adulthood. Being a father. I typed a response and then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I settled on something simple. Talk to your lawyer. Everything goes through them now. 'Cause I was done. Done with his excuses. Done with his manipulation. Done trying to make him be the father our daughter deserved. He'd made his choices. Now he'd live with the consequences. The next day, my lawyer called with an update. The prosecutor's office is reviewing the case. Detective Martinez recommended they move forward with charges. What kind of charges? Most likely filing a false legal claim and possibly perjury. The evidence is strong. His acknowledgement of paternity before court, the sudden reversal, the test results proving he was lying. It all adds up. What's the penalty for that? Depends on how the prosecutor wants to charge it. Could be fines. Could be probation. In extreme cases, jail time. Jail time. For denying his daughter. The irony wasn't lost on me. How do you feel about all this? My lawyer asked gently. Honestly. Exhausted. But also relieved. He can't lie anymore. The truth is official now. You did the right thing. Not just for you but for your daughter. She'll know her mother fought for her. After we hung up, I looked at the paternity test results still sitting on my coffee table. A single piece of paper that had cost so much emotional energy to obtain. But it was worth it. Because now, when my daughter was old enough to ask questions, I'd have answers. Proof that her father knew she was his and chose to deny her anyway. Not because he genuinely doubted. But because acknowledging her meant accepting responsibility he didn't want. That truth would hurt her someday. But at least it would be the truth. And that was something I could give her. Honesty about who her father was. About what happened. About why he wasn't present. Not a fairy tale. Not a comforting lie. Just the documented, proven, undeniable truth. And sometimes that's the most loving gift a mother can offer. 3 weeks after the paternity test results, the first real consequence hit. My lawyer called with news I'd been waiting for. The prosecutor's office is moving forward. They're filing charges. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. What charges exactly? Perjury and filing a false legal claim. Both are misdemeanors, but they carry serious penalties. Fines, possible probation, and it goes on his criminal record. When? He'll be served with a summons within the next few days. He'll have to appear in court to answer the charges. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long moment. This was real. He was going to face actual legal consequences for what he'd done. Not just the child support he'd tried to avoid. Actual criminal charges. Part of me felt vindicated. But another part felt something unexpected. Guilt. Was I destroying his life over this? Was I taking it too far? I looked at my daughter playing on the floor. She'd just learned to clap and was doing it repeatedly, laughing at herself. Completely innocent. Completely unaware that her existence had caused all of this chaos. Well, I wasn't taking it too far. He'd lied under oath. He'd denied his own daughter publicly. He'd used the legal system to harass and humiliate me. And there had to be consequences for that. The next day my phone rang. His mother. I'd blocked his number, but I'd forgotten about her. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. Hello. How could you do this to him? Her voice was sharp. Accusatory. Do what? You know what? Police. Charges. You're trying to ruin his life. I'm trying to hold him accountable. He's your daughter's father. Do you want her to grow up knowing her mother put her father in jail? The manipulation was breathtaking. He put himself in this situation. He lied in court. He was scared. He made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. Lying under oath about your daughter's paternity is not a mistake. It's a choice. You're bitter. You can't accept that he moved on. I felt anger flare. This has nothing to do with him moving on. This is about him denying his daughter and committing perjury to avoid responsibility. She's going to hate you for this someday. The words hit like a slap. I thought about my daughter. About what she'd think when she was old enough to understand all of this. Maybe, I said quietly. But at least she'll know I fought for her. That when her father tried to pretend she didn't exist, I made sure the truth mattered. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation. Kept questioning myself. Was I doing the right thing? Or was I letting anger and hurt drive me to destroy him? I got up and walked to my daughter's room. Watched her sleep. She looked so peaceful. So innocent. So perfect. And I knew. Whatever happened next, I'd made the right choice. Because she deserved a mother who stood up for her. Who didn't let her be erased or diminished or denied. 2 days later my lawyer called again. He's requesting a meeting. His attorney wants to negotiate. Negotiate what? The charges are criminal. I can't drop them even if I wanted to. I know. But he's panicking. He wants you to write a letter to the prosecutor saying you don't want them to pursue charges. Will that work? It might influence the prosecutor's decision, but it's not guaranteed. Once charges are filed, it's up to the state to decide whether to proceed. What's he offering? Full child support retroactive to her birth. No visitation demands. Essentially everything you asked for originally. Thought about it. This was what I'd wanted at the beginning. Him acknowledging his daughter. Supporting her financially. Taking responsibility. But everything had changed. He'd shown me who he really was. A man who would lie, manipulate, and deny his own child to avoid inconvenience. No, I said firmly. You're sure? I'm sure. He doesn't get to commit crimes and then buy his way out. The charges stand. There was a pause. Then my lawyer said, I respect that. And for what it's worth, I think you're making the right decision. The court date for the criminal charges arrived on a gray Monday morning. I wasn't required to be there, but I went anyway. Sat in the back of the courtroom watching. He stood before the judge looking smaller than I remembered. His lawyer spoke for him, trying to minimize what he'd done, calling it a misunderstanding, a moment of poor judgment. The prosecutor wasn't having it. She laid out the evidence methodically. His acknowledgement of paternity before the court hearing. His sudden reversal. The paternity test proving he was the father. His threatening messages to me afterward. The judge listened impassively. When both sides had finished, she spoke. Mr. Name, you stood in my courtroom and made a claim under oath that you knew or should have known was false. You wasted court resources. You put Ms. Name and your daughter through unnecessary anguish. And you did it to avoid a legal obligation. He started to speak. She cut him off. I'm not interested in excuses. You're an educated adult. You knew what you were doing. The question now is what the appropriate penalty should be. My heart pounded. This was it. The moment of accountability. I'm sentencing you to 1 year probation, 100 hours community service, and a fine of $5,000. You will also be required to attend parenting classes, though I suspect it's too late for those to do much good. She looked at him with something like disgust. You have a daughter you denied. I hope someday you understand the gravity of what you've done. But I suspect you won't. Dismissed. I watched him leave the courtroom, his shoulders hunched, his mother crying beside him, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just emptiness. Outside, the prosecutor found me. Thank you for coming forward, she said. Cases like this are rare. Most women don't have the courage to pursue criminal charges. I didn't do it for me, I said. I did it for my daughter. She's lucky to have you. That evening, I sat with my daughter and told her a story she wouldn't understand for years. Your daddy did something wrong. And today he had to answer for it. Someday you'll ask me why he's not here. And I'll tell you the truth. That he wasn't brave enough to love you. But that I loved you enough for both of us. She reached up and grabbed my face with her chubby hands. Babbled something that sounded like, Mama. And in that moment I knew. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges we faced, we'd be okay. 'Cause we had each other. And that was enough. The headlines hit the next day. Local news had picked up the story. Father charged with perjury in paternity case. It was a small article, barely noticeable, but it was there. My phone exploded with messages. Friends who hadn't known what was happening. Family members with opinions. Strangers praising me or condemning me depending on their perspective. I turned off my phone and focused on what mattered. My daughter. Her life. Her future. The fight wasn't over. There would be appeals. More court dates. More drama. But the important battle had been won. He couldn't deny her anymore. The truth was official. And he'd faced consequences for trying to erase her. That was justice. Imperfect. Messy. But real. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. The news article was small, buried in the local section. But in our small community, it might as well have been front-page news. Within hours, everyone knew. My phone started buzzing at 7 in the morning. Text messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some supportive, some judgmental, all wanting the story. I can't believe you had him arrested. Good for you. He deserved it. Don't you think you went too far? You're so brave. I didn't respond to any of them. What could I say? That this wasn't about revenge. That I was just trying to protect my daughter. They'd already made up their minds about who I was and what this meant. At the grocery store that afternoon, I felt eyes following me. Whispers behind hands. A woman I vaguely recognized approached me in the produce section. You're the one from the news, aren't you? The paternity case. I wanted to disappear. Yes. I think what you did was brave. My ex tried to dodge child support for years. I wish I'd done what you did. I thanked her and moved away quickly. My daughter was getting fussy in the cart, sensing my discomfort. But not everyone was supportive. That evening I found a note taped to my apartment door. No signature. Just words scrawled in angry handwriting. Gold digger. You destroyed a man's life for money. Karma is coming for you. I crumpled it up and threw it away, but the words stayed with me. Is that what people thought? That this was about money? The child support payments had started coming through. They helped. Of course they helped. But they didn't erase the months of struggle. Didn't undo the humiliation. Didn't compensate for my daughter growing up without a father who actually wanted her. This had never been about money. It was about principle. About accountability. About refusing to let him rewrite history and erase his daughter's existence. But explaining that to strangers who'd already decided I was vindictive was impossible. My daughter's daycare called that week. The director wanted to have a conversation about the situation. I went in dreading what was coming. We're just concerned, she said carefully, about the publicity. Some of the other parents have been asking questions. What kind of questions? About whether it's appropriate for their children to be around this situation. I felt my face flush. My daughter is 10 months old. She hasn't done anything wrong. Of course not. No one is suggesting. Then what are you suggesting? She shifted uncomfortably. Just that perhaps you might want to consider taking some time until things settle down. They were asking me to leave, to remove my daughter because her father was a criminal and I was the woman who'd turned him in. No, I said firmly. My daughter stays enrolled. If the other parents have a problem with that, they can withdraw their children. I left before she could respond, my hands shaking with anger and humiliation. That night I broke down. Called my mother crying, unable to hold it together anymore. Everyone hates me, I sobbed. They think I'm vindictive. They think I destroyed his life. They're treating my daughter like she's toxic. Let them think what they want, my mother said fiercely. You did the right thing. And anyone with sense knows it. But what if this follows her? What if people treat her differently because of what I did? Then you teach her to hold her head high. To know that her mother fought for her when no one else would. That's not shame. That's pride. I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't stop thinking about my daughter growing up in this town, known as the kid whose father denied her, whose mother had him prosecuted. The next day something unexpected happened. An email arrived from a woman I'd never met. I saw your story in the news. I want you to know you're not alone. My ex did the same thing 7 years ago. Denied our son to avoid support. I didn't have the courage to pursue criminal charges. I wish I had. What you did matters. You're showing other women that they don't have to accept being lied to and manipulated. Thank you. I read it 3 times. Then read it again. Thank you. Someone was thanking me. More emails came. Women with similar stories. Some who'd won their battles. Some who'd given up. All of them understanding what this had cost. You're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for demanding accountability. Your daughter will understand one day that you fought for her. I printed them out. Every single one. Put them in a folder. For the days when I doubted myself. For the times when the whispers and judgment became too much. My lawyer called with another update. His appeal was denied. The conviction stands. What does that mean? It means it's over. The criminal case is closed. He has a record. He completed probation terms. And he can't claim innocence anymore. I felt something release in my chest. It was over. Finally over. There's something else, she continued. I've been contacted by a journalist. She wants to write a feature article about your case. About false paternity claims and how the system handles them. I don't know if I want that. Think about it. Your story could help other women. Could change how these cases are handled. After we hung up, I thought about it. My face in another article. My story told again. More judgment. More whispers. More notes on my door. But maybe my lawyer was right. Maybe my daughter wasn't the only one who needed this story told. Maybe there were other women out there, sitting in courtrooms, being lied to by their children's fathers, thinking they had no recourse. Maybe they needed to know that fighting back was possible. That the system, however imperfect, could work. That men who lie under oath can face consequences. I called the journalist and agreed to an interview. 2 weeks later, the article ran. Not in the local paper this time. In a major magazine. When fathers lie, one mother's fight for accountability. It was fair, balanced, told both sides. But it didn't shy away from the facts. He'd lied. He'd been caught. He'd faced consequences. The response was overwhelming. Letters, emails, messages from women across the country sharing their own stories, thanking me, saying they'd been inspired to take action in their own cases. One message stood out. From a prosecutor in another state. Your case has changed how we handle these situations in our jurisdiction. We're now pursuing criminal charges in cases of proven false paternity claims. Thank you for being brave enough to start this conversation. I showed the message to my daughter, who was now a year old and trying to walk, holding onto furniture with determined little hands. You see this. What we went through mattered. Not just for us. For other people too. She grabbed the phone and tried to put it in her mouth. I laughed and pulled it away. That night I thought about everything that had happened. Pain. The humiliation. The judgment. Cost. And I realized something important. I do it all again. Not because I enjoyed the fight. Not because I wanted revenge. But because sometimes doing the right thing means being willing to be misunderstood. To be judged. To be called vindictive and bitter and worse. Because the alternative, letting him get away with it, teaching my daughter that lies don't have consequences, was unacceptable. The repercussions would continue. The whispers would probably never fully stop. And my daughter would one day ask difficult questions about all of this. But I'd have answers. Honest answers. About standing up for what's right even when it's hard. About refusing to be silenced. About fighting for truth. And those were lessons worth any price. 6 months after the conviction, life began to feel normal again. Not the old normal. A different normal. One where I'd learned that peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances, but from accepting imperfect ones and building anyway. The child support payments came like clockwork. Every month. Time. Automatic deposit. Cold. Transactional. But reliable. I'd set up a separate account for them. Money for my daughter's needs. Acre. Low. Medical expenses. Savings for her future. I never touched it for myself. That felt important somehow. This wasn't about me. It was about her. He never reached out. No calls. No text. No requests to see her. The court had given him visitation rights as part of the settlement, but he'd never exercised them. Not once. At first, I'd wondered if he would. If one day my phone would ring and he'd want to meet his daughter. Be part of her life. But months passed and nothing. Silence. Complete and total absence. My daughter was 15 months old now. Walking. Talking in simple words. Mama was her favorite, though she'd also learned no and used it constantly. She had opinions about everything. What she wore. What she ate. Which books we read at bedtime. She was becoming a person. And her father was missing all of it. Sometimes I felt angry about that. Not for me but for her. She deserved a father who showed up. Who cared. Who wanted to know her. But most of the time I felt relieved. Because the alternative, having him in our lives half-heartedly, showing up sporadically, disappointing her over and over, seemed worse than his absence. At least this way there was clarity. No false hope. No broken promises. Just the truth. Her father chose not to be present. I tell her that someday. When she was old enough to ask. And I'd tell her the rest too. About how I fought for her. How I refused to let him erase her. How the truth mattered more than convenience. My job had stabilized. The remote work I'd found during the chaos had become permanent. Better pay. Flexible hours. The ability to be present for my daughter while still earning income. We moved to a better apartment. 2 bedrooms. A small balcony where I could grow herbs. Windows that let in morning light. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I decorated my daughter's room carefully. Soft colors, books everywhere, a small table where she could color and play. Photos of us together covering one wall. Visual proof that we were a family. Complete. Whole. Even without him. My mother visited more now. The crisis had healed something between us. She'd flown in the weekend after the conviction, held me while I cried, told me she was proud of who I'd become. "You're stronger than I ever was," she'd said. I had to be. No, you chose to be. There's a difference. She played with her granddaughter now, making silly faces, reading books in exaggerated voices. Spoiling her with toys I didn't have money for. Being present in ways I hadn't expected. "She's so much like you," my mother said one afternoon, watching my daughter toddle around the living room. "How so?" "Determined. Stubborn. Refuses to give up even when things are hard." I watched my daughter pulling books off the shelf, one after another, examining each before moving to the next. She knew what she wanted. "I hope so," I said quietly. "She's going to need that." My friends had become my family. The ones who'd shown up during the worst moments stayed. Helped with babysitting. Brought dinner when I was too exhausted to cook. Listened when I needed to talk. Celebrated small victories. One friend in particular, Sarah, had become essential. She was a single mother too, though divorced rather than never married. We'd bonded over shared struggles. Swapped childcare. Vented about the unfairness of doing this alone. "You're doing amazing," she told me one evening. We were at the park watching our daughters play in the sandbox together. "I don't feel amazing. I feel tired." That's what amazing looks like when you're a single mother. Tired but still showing up. I laughed. "That should be on a t-shirt. Let's make one. We'll be millionaires." We sat in companionable silence, watching our daughters dig holes and fill buckets. Simple joy. Uncomplicated childhood. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked suddenly. "Going after him the way you did?" Thought about it. The months of stress. The judgment. Cost. "No," I said honestly. "I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret doing it." "Would you do it again?" "In a heartbeat." That night, after putting my daughter to bed, I sat with a glass of wine and thought about who I'd become over the past year and a half. The naive woman who'd told him she was pregnant was gone. She'd believed in fairness and accountability and people doing the right thing because it was right. In her place was someone harder, more cynical, but also stronger, more capable. Someone who knew that sometimes you have to fight for what's right because no one else will. I didn't miss who I used to be. But I mourned her innocence. My phone buzzed. An email from the prosecutor who'd handled the case. "I wanted to update you. Your case has led to policy changes in how we handle false paternity claims. We're now actively pursuing criminal charges in these situations rather than treating them as civil matters. Thank you for your courage." I read it twice. Policy changes. Because of what I'd gone through. Because I'd refused to accept that lying under oath was consequence-free. It didn't undo the pain. But it meant something. It meant other women might have an easier path than I did. I wrote back. "Thank you for taking it seriously. I hope this helps others." The next morning, I woke to my daughter calling from her crib. "Mama, up." I got her, changed her diaper, brought her to the kitchen for breakfast. She sat in her high chair babbling about something I couldn't quite understand but nodded along anyway. This was my life now. Morning routines with a toddler. Working from home while she napped. Dinner and bath time and bedtime stories. Weekends at the park. Playdates with Sarah's daughter. Small, ordinary moments that added up to a life. It wasn't the life I'd imagined. But it was good. Real. And my daughter was happy. Healthy. Loved. That's what mattered. Later that week I got a message from someone unexpected. His mother. "I owe you an apology. I defended my son when I should have held him accountable. What he did was wrong. You were right to pursue charges. I'm sorry for how I treated you. And I'm sorry I haven't been part of my granddaughter's life. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet her. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. To protect my daughter from people who'd sided with him. Who'd called me vindictive and bitter. But another part remembered that my daughter deserved to know her family. Even the complicated parts. I wrote back. Let me think about it. That night I talked it through with Sarah. Do you trust her? She asked. I don't know. Then wait. You don't owe her anything. He chose her side. Now she has to earn her way back. But what if this is genuine? What if she really wants to be part of my daughter's life? Then she'll wait. And she'll prove it through actions, not just words. Sarah was right. Trust had to be earned. And after everything, I wasn't going to make it easy. I wrote back to his mother. I appreciate the apology. I need time to consider whether this is right for my daughter. I'll let you know. Some might say I was being cold, unforgiving. But I'd learned the hard way that protecting my daughter sometimes meant saying no to people who might hurt her. Even family. Especially family. As I put my daughter to bed that night, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes and said, "Love you, Mama." 3 words that made everything worth it. Love you too, baby. Always. She fell asleep holding my hand, safe and loved and completely unaware of the battles that had been fought to secure her future. And that was exactly how it should be. Because that's what mothers do. We carry the weight so our children don't have to. We fight the battles they're too young to understand. We make the hard choices so they can grow up knowing they were worth fighting for. My daughter would learn her story eventually. All of it. The good parts and the hard parts and the complicated parts. But for now she just knew love. And security. And a mother who would never stop fighting for her. And that was enough. 3 weeks after his mother's apology, I agreed to meet. Not at my apartment. Not on my turf. Neutral ground. A coffee shop across town where we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. I left my daughter with Sarah. This first meeting needed to happen without her. I needed to gauge whether this woman was genuine or whether this was another manipulation. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting at a corner table. Hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked older than I remembered. Grayer. More tired. Like the past year had aged her. When she saw me she stood. Hesitated. Then sat back down. I ordered coffee and joined her at the table. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Loaded with history. Thank you for coming, she said finally. He nodded. Didn't offer pleasantries. This wasn't a social call. I owe you more than an apology, she continued. I owe you the truth. About what I knew and when I knew it. Waited. My son called me the day you told him you were pregnant. He was panicking. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. That the relationship was over and he didn't want to be tied to you for the rest of his life. The words stung even though I'd suspected as much. I told him to step up. To do the right thing. But I also. She paused, looked down at her cup. I also told him that if he truly didn't want to be involved, there were ways to minimize his obligation. You encouraged him to deny paternity. Not directly. But I planted the seed. I told him paternity tests could be contested. That courts often side with fathers who claim doubt. I gave him the blueprint for what he did. I felt rage building but kept my voice level. Why? Because I was protecting my son. That's what mothers do, right? Protect their children from consequences. That's not protection. That's enabling. She nodded, tears forming. I know that now. Watching what he did to you to his daughter, I realized I'd raised a coward. And I'd helped him avoid accountability. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to understand. My apology isn't just words. I'm taking responsibility for my part in what happened. I enabled his behavior. I helped him justify lying. And I'm ashamed. I sat with that for a moment. This was more than I'd expected. Not just an apology. Confession. What do you want? Yes. To know my granddaughter. To be part of her life. Not to replace what my son should have been, but to be something. Presence. Family. She doesn't need family that abandoned her. I know. But I'm asking for a chance to be different. To show her that not everyone in her father's family rejected her. I thought about my daughter. About what she deserved. A grandmother who wanted to know her. Who'd admitted fault. Who was asking, not demanding. This isn't about you, I said firmly. It's about her. And if I let you into her life, you follow my rules. My boundaries. You don't speak badly about me to her. You don't make excuses for your son. And if you disappoint her, if you hurt her, you're out. Permanently. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't a second chance for you to feel better about your guilt. This is about my daughter having a grandmother who shows up and stays. I'll show up. I promise. I looked at her. Saw genuine remorse. But also saw someone who'd enabled her son's worst behaviors. Trust would take time. We start slow, I said. Short visits. Here in public. If that goes well, maybe more. But you earn every minute with her. Thank you. I finished my coffee and stood to leave. She touched my arm gently. He talks about her sometimes. My son. When he's had too much to drink. He says he wonders what she looks like. What she's like. He could know if he wanted to. I know. His pride won't let him admit he was wrong. That's not my problem anymore. I left feeling strange. Not angry. Not happy. Just tired. Tired of carrying other people's regrets. Tired of managing other people's relationships with my daughter. But I'd said yes. Because my daughter deserved the chance to know her grandmother. Even if that relationship came with complications. The first visit happened 2 days later. Same coffee shop. I brought my daughter this time, though she was shy around strangers lately. His mother's face when she saw her granddaughter for the first time was something I'll never forget. Pure love. Instant and overwhelming. She's beautiful, she whispered. Yes, she is. My daughter clung to me, uncertain. This strange woman was making her uncomfortable. It's okay, I told her. This is your grandma. She wanted to meet you. His mother sat down slowly, giving my daughter space. Pulled out a small stuffed animal from her bag. Held it out gently. I brought this for you. If you want it. My daughter looked at me. He nodded. She reached out tentatively and took the toy. Examined it carefully. Then smiled. And just like that, a connection formed. We stayed for 20 minutes. His mother asked careful questions. How old was she? What did she like? Was she sleeping through the night? Normal grandmother questions. She didn't ask about him. Didn't make excuses. Didn't try to explain his absence. Just focused on getting to know her granddaughter. When we left, she hugged me. Thank you for this. I know I don't deserve it. You don't, I agreed. But she does. Over the following months, visits became regular. Once a week at first, then twice. His mother was true to her word. Showed up consistently. Brought small gifts. Played with her granddaughter. Followed my boundaries. And slowly, grudgingly, I began to trust her. One afternoon, after my daughter had fallen asleep during a visit, his mother asked the question I'd been waiting for. Have you thought about what you'll tell her? About her father? The truth. That he wasn't brave enough to be her dad. That he chose pride over love. That's going to hurt her. Life hurts. But lies hurt worse. She nodded. I wish I'd told my son that when he was young. That running from hard things doesn't make you strong. It makes you a coward. You can tell him now. He won't listen. Then that's his choice. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. You're a remarkable mother. My son is a fool for walking away from you both. I don't need him anymore. I thought I did. But I built a life without him. A good life. I can see that. When we left that day, I felt something shift. His mother wasn't trying to fix her son's mistakes. She was trying to be present despite them. That distinction mattered. My daughter now had a grandmother. Not the family I'd imagined, but family nonetheless. And sometimes that's how healing happens. Not through grand gestures or perfect apologies, but through people showing up day after day, proving through actions that they're committed to being better. It didn't erase what happened, didn't make his absence okay, didn't undo the lies and pain and betrayal, but it added something new to our story. A grandmother who chose her granddaughter over her pride, who admitted fault and asked for forgiveness through consistency rather than words. And my daughter, oblivious to all the complicated history, just knew she had someone else who loved her. That was enough. 2 years after the court case closed, my daughter turned 3. We celebrated with a small party. Sarah and her daughter, my mother, his mother, who'd become a steady presence in our lives. Few friends from daycare. Nothing elaborate. Just cake and balloons and the kind of chaos that happens when toddlers gather in one space. My daughter ran around in her birthday dress, face covered in frosting, laughing with that pure, unfiltered joy that only children possess. She had no idea that this birthday was significant for reasons beyond turning 3. 2 years. 2 years since I'd sat in a police station filing criminal charges. 2 years since the paternity test that proved what I'd always known. 2 years since his conviction. Life had become normal. Not perfect, not without challenges, but stable, predictable. But the child support still came every month. I'd stopped thinking about it consciously. It was just part of our budget now. Daycare costs, groceries, savings for her future. The financial stability it provided had allowed me to breathe easier, to focus on being present rather than constantly worrying about money. My job had grown into something more. I'd been promoted. Better title, better pay. The flexibility to work from home while raising my daughter had proven my value, and the company recognized it. We'd moved again. House this time. 2 bedrooms. A yard where my daughter could play. Neighbors who waved hello. A community that felt like home. The whispers had stopped. Or maybe I'd just stopped noticing them. People had moved on to other scandals, other stories. We were old news. And that was exactly what I wanted. At the birthday party, his mother pulled me aside while the kids were playing. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," she said. "You've earned it." "Has he?" She paused. "Has my son reached out?" "No. And I don't expect him to." She nodded sadly. "He asks about her sometimes. When we talk. Wants to know if she looks like him, if she's healthy, if she's happy. He could know all of that if he wanted. His pride won't let him. Then that's his loss. Do you ever think about telling her about him?" I looked at my daughter, covered in frosting, laughing at something Sarah's daughter had said. "So happy, so secure. Eventually, when she's old enough to understand. But right now she's just a kid who knows she's loved. That's enough." Later that night, after everyone had left and my daughter was asleep surrounded by new toys, I sat in the quiet of our living room and thought about how far we'd come. The woman I'd been 3 years ago wouldn't recognize the person I'd become. She'd been softer, more trusting, believed that fairness existed without having to fight for it. This version of me knew better, knew that justice is something you have to demand, that accountability doesn't happen automatically. That protecting your child sometimes means becoming someone harder than you ever wanted to be. I didn't regret it. Any of it. The police report. The criminal charges. The public humiliation he'd faced. He'd earned every consequence through his own choices. But I also didn't celebrate it. There was no satisfaction in knowing he had a criminal record. No joy in remembering the courtroom where he'd been sentenced. It was just something that had happened. A battle I'd fought and won. A chapter that had closed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My heart jumped for a second, but it wasn't him. It was a woman I'd never met. "I read your story online. I'm in the same situation. Father denying paternity to avoid support. I didn't know I could file criminal charges. Thank you for sharing your experience. You gave me the courage to fight back." I stared at the message, This still happened. Months after the articles had died down, people still found my story, still reached out, still needed to know they weren't alone. I wrote back, "You're stronger than you think. Document everything. Find a good lawyer. Don't let him gaslight you into believing this is normal. It's not. And you deserve better." Her response came quickly. "Did it get easier? After everything?" I thought about how to answer that honestly. Different. Not easier exactly. But you learn what you're capable of. And that strength changes everything. I set down the phone and walked to my daughter's room. Watched her sleep, clutching her new stuffed animal, peaceful and safe. This was what mattered. Not the battle I'd fought. Not the man who'd tried to deny her. Not the criminal conviction or the child support or any of it. Just this. Safe home. A loving mother. Childhood filled with security and joy. Everything else was just background noise. The next morning, my daughter woke up asking about her party. Who was there? What present she got? When could she have more cake? Normal 3-year-old concerns. Beautiful in their simplicity. Did Grandma have fun? She asked, meaning his mother. She'd started calling her that a few months ago. Felt natural. But I think so. She loves you very much. I love her too. That's good, baby. Love is important. Mama, can we go to the park? After breakfast? Can Sarah come? I'll text her mom. These were the conversations that filled our days now. Simple. Ordinary. Exactly what I'd been fighting for all along. The park, I watched my daughter play. She'd grown so much. Taller. More coordinated. More confident. She climbed the play structure fearlessly, slid down the slide laughing, ran after butterflies with pure determination. She was becoming her own person, with her own personality, her own preferences, her own way of seeing the world. And she was doing it without him. Without a father who cared enough to show up. Without the man who should have been pushing her on swings and cheering for her accomplishments. Part of me would always grieve that for her. The absence of someone who should have been present. The hole in her life where a father should exist. But I'd learned something important over the past 2 years. Families come in all configurations. Love doesn't require a traditional structure. And children can thrive with one parent who shows up completely rather than 2 parents where one is absent emotionally. She had me. She had her grandmothers. She had Sarah's family who'd become like extended relatives. She had teachers and friends and a community that cared about her. She had enough. More than enough. That evening, after bath time and stories, as I was tucking her into bed, my daughter looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mama, do I have a daddy?" My heart stopped. The question I'd been dreading. But she was 3. It was inevitable. "Yes, baby. Everyone has a daddy. Where is mine?" I chose my words carefully. "Your daddy made some choices that mean he can't be here right now. Will he come back?" "I don't know. Do you think he loves me?" The hardest question of all. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that her father chose pride over her? That she wasn't enough to make him stay? "I think he doesn't know how to love the way you deserve to be loved. But Mama loves you enough for 2 parents." She seemed to accept that. Snuggled deeper into her blankets. "Okay. Love you, Mama. Love you too, baby. Forever and always." She fell asleep quickly, leaving me sitting beside her bed, processing the conversation. The first of many we'd have about her father. Each one would get harder as she got older and understood more. But I'd be ready. With truth. With love. With the unwavering message that his absence was about his shortcomings, not hers. 2 years after the battle ended, I was still fighting. But the fight had changed. It wasn't about accountability anymore. It wasn't about justice or consequences. It was about protecting my daughter's heart. About teaching her that she has value regardless of whether her father recognized it. About showing her that one parent who loves completely is better than 2 parents where one is half present. And that was a fight I'd never stop fighting. Because that's what mothers do. My daughter turned 4 with more questions than ever. That's what 4-year-olds do. They ask why about everything. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly? Why do we sleep? And inevitably, why don't I have a daddy? The question came on an ordinary Tuesday. We were at the park. A family nearby. Mother, father, 2 kids were playing together. The dad was pushing his son on the swing while the mother helped their daughter climb the jungle gym. My daughter watched them with curious eyes, then turned to me. Why doesn't my daddy come to the park? I'd prepared for this conversation, rehearsed it in my head countless times, but actually having it still felt like swallowing glass. I sat down on the bench and pulled her onto my lap. Your daddy made choices that mean he can't be here. What choices? How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her father denied she existed? That he lied in court? That he went to jail for lying? He wasn't ready to be a daddy. And instead of being honest about that, he made some mistakes. Can he be ready now? Maybe someday. But right now, no. Does he love me? The question I dreaded most. The one with no good answer. I think he doesn't know how to love you the way you deserve. But Mama loves you enough for 2 parents. She thought about this seriously. Sarah has a daddy. I know. Emma from school has a daddy. Yes. Why don't I? I felt tears threatening but held them back. Because your daddy wasn't brave enough. But you don't need him to be happy. You have me. And Grandma. And Nana. And so many people who love you. She nodded slowly, seemed to accept this, then went back to playing. But I sat on that bench feeling like I'd failed her somehow. Even though I'd answered honestly. Even though I'd protected her from the worst details. Even though I'd done everything right. That night she asked more questions at bedtime. Will my daddy ever want to meet me? I don't know, baby. Am I bad? Is that why he doesn't come? My heart shattered. No. You are perfect. This has nothing to do with you. Your daddy has problems that he needs to fix. But they're his problems, not yours. Promise. I promise. You are good and lovable and deserving of everything wonderful. His absence is about him, not you. She fell asleep holding my hand, but I stayed beside her bed for a long time, crying silently, hating him for putting these questions in her head. The next day I called his mother. She's asking about him, I said without preamble. What did you tell her? The truth. Appropriately. But the truth. How did she handle it? She thinks it's her fault. That she's not good enough. His mother was quiet for a moment. Would it help if I talked to her? About what? About how much I love her. About how this isn't about her. About how some people aren't capable of being what they should be. Thought about it. Maybe. But you can't make excuses for him. I won't. Those days are over. She came over that weekend. Took my daughter out for ice cream. When they came back, my daughter seemed lighter somehow. Grandma says Daddy has a broken heart, she told me. But my heart isn't broken. I have you. I looked at his mother. She nodded slightly. It wasn't the explanation I'd have chosen, but it worked. Over the next few months, the questions continued. Sometimes out of nowhere. Sometimes triggered by seeing other families. Does Daddy know my name? Yes. Does he know I'm 4? Yes. Why doesn't he send me birthday presents? Because he's not capable of doing that right now. Will he ever be capable? I don't know, baby. Hope so. But I can't promise. Each question was a tiny knife. Not because I didn't have answers. But because she shouldn't have to ask them. Because she deserved a father who showed up without being asked. Who wanted to know her name and her birthday and every detail of her life. But he wasn't that person. And I couldn't change that no matter how much I wanted to. One day at preschool pickup, another mother approached me. We'd been friendly but never close. I overheard daughter's name. Asking the teacher about fathers, she said carefully. She seems confused about why she doesn't have one. We're working through it, I said defensively. I wasn't criticizing. I was actually wondering if you'd be interested in joining our single parent support group. We meet twice a month. There are other kids who are growing up with one parent. It might help her to know she's not alone. I'd been so focused on protecting my daughter that I hadn't thought about connecting her with other kids in similar situations. Can I think about it? Of course. Here's my number. No pressure. That evening, I asked my daughter if she'd like to meet other kids who also lived with just one parent. Her eyes lit up. Other kids don't have daddies. Some don't. Some don't have mommies. Families come in all different shapes. Can we go? We went to the next meeting. My daughter was shy at first, but quickly bonded with another girl her age. They played together while the adults talked. Hearing other single parents share their struggles made me feel less alone. The judgment they'd faced, the questions their kids asked, the guilt they carried even when they'd done nothing wrong. One mother said something that stuck with me. I used to think my daughter needed her father. But what she actually needs is to know she's loved and secure. I can provide that alone. I was providing that. My daughter had a good life. Happy life. She was thriving in preschool. Had friends. Was curious and creative and full of joy. Yes, she asked questions about her father. Yes, his absence left a mark. But she wasn't defined by it. She was defined by the love she received, the security she felt, the community we'd built. That night, as I tucked her in, she said something unexpected. Mama, I'm glad I have you. I'm glad I have you too, baby. Even without a daddy, we're still a family, right? The best family. Okay. Love you. Love you too. Forever. She fell asleep quickly, peaceful and content. And I realized something important. The questions would continue. They'd get harder as she got older. At some point, I'd have to tell her the full truth, about the court case, the criminal charges, all of it. But for now, she had what she needed. Love, security, honesty, and the knowledge that her father's absence was his failing, not hers. That was enough. Had to be. 5 years had passed since the court case. My daughter was starting kindergarten, a milestone that felt both monumental and bittersweet. The night before her first day, I helped her pick out her outfit. She insisted on wearing her favorite purple dress with the sparkly shoes that made her feel like a princess. Are you nervous? Yes. A little bit. But also excited. That's normal. You're going to do great. Mama, she said suddenly, her voice serious. Will the other kids ask about my daddy? My heart clenched. They might. What should I say? I sat down on her bed, pulled her into my lap. You say the truth. That you have a mama who loves you very much. And that's your family. But what if they say that's weird? Then they're wrong. Families come in all different shapes. Some have 2 parents. Some have 1. Some have grandparents raising them. Some have 2 mommies or 2 daddies. Love is what makes a family, not how it looks. She seemed to accept this. But I could see the worry in her eyes. The awareness that she was different. That other kids had something she didn't. The first week of kindergarten went smoothly. She made friends quickly, loved her teacher. Came home every day bursting with stories about what she'd learned. But on Friday she came home quiet. Withdrawn. What's wrong, baby? Nothing. You sure? She nodded. But at dinner she barely ate. At bath time, she was uncharacteristically silent. Finally at bedtime it came out. Emma said I'm lying about not having a daddy. She said everyone has a daddy. What did you say? I said my daddy doesn't live with us. And she said that means he doesn't love me. I felt rage and heartbreak in equal measure. Emma is wrong. Your daddy's choices have nothing to do with you. But why doesn't he want to know me? And there it was. The question I'd been dreading. The one I tried to shield her from as long as possible. Come here, I said, pulling her close. I'm going to tell you something important. Something I've been waiting to explain until you were old enough to understand. She looked up at me with those serious eyes. Waiting. When I told your daddy I was pregnant with you, he got scared. He wasn't ready to be a parent. And instead of being honest about that, he made some bad choices. What kind of bad choices? He told people you weren't his daughter. even though he knew you were. He lied because he didn't want to take care of you. That was mean. Yes, it was. And Mama had to go to court to prove you were his daughter. To make sure he helped pay for things you need. Did you win? Yes, the truth won. But your daddy was very angry about it. And instead of apologizing, he decided not to be part of your life. She processed this quietly. So it's not because I'm bad. No, baby. You are perfect. This is about him being scared and not brave enough to love you. That's his problem, not yours. Will he ever be brave? I don't know. But I hope so. Because you're worth being brave for. She fell asleep in my arms that night. And I stayed beside her, crying quietly, hating him all over again for making her question her worth. The next morning, I called the elementary school and requested a meeting with her teacher and the counselor. Explained the situation. Asked them to be aware that my daughter was processing some difficult emotions about her absent father. They were understanding. Promised to watch for signs of distress. Offered resources for children dealing with parental absence. That week his mother called. I heard what happened at school, she said. How is she? Struggling. She's starting to realize her situation is different from other kids. I'm so sorry. For all of it. For what my son did. For what he continues to do by staying away. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I raised him. I enabled his worst behaviors. I'm complicit. You've made amends. You show up for her. That matters. Have you thought about therapy? For her? I had. Constantly. I'm looking into it. She needs tools to process this. To understand that his absence isn't a reflection of her value. If you need help paying for it, I'd like to contribute. Thank you. We enrolled her in play therapy the following week. A gentle woman named Dr. Chan who specialized in children dealing with parental abandonment. My daughter was resistant at first. I'm not broken, she insisted. No one thinks you're broken, I said. But sometimes we need help understanding big feelings. That's what Dr. Chan does. She helps kids understand why they feel sad or angry or confused. Slowly, my daughter began to open up in therapy. Drew pictures. Played with dolls. Talked about a girl who didn't have a daddy and sometimes felt sad about it. Dr. Chen called me in after the 4th session. Your daughter is remarkably resilient, she said. But she's also carrying some grief. Grief for a relationship she's never had but feels like she's supposed to have. How do I help her with that? You're already doing it. Being honest. Being present. Validating her feelings. The best thing you can do is continue to model that her worth isn't dependent on anyone else's recognition of it. What about him? Should I encourage contact? Not unless he's willing to be consistent. Sporadic contact can be more damaging than total absence. False hope is cruel. I knew she was right. But part of me still wondered if I should reach out to him. Tell him his daughter was asking about him. Give him one more chance to step up. But then I remembered the court case. The lies. The threats. The complete absence of remorse or responsibility. He'd made his choice. Over and over again. That evening, I sat with my daughter and did something I'd been avoiding. I showed her a photo of him. This is your daddy, I said. His name is name. This was taken a long time ago, before you were born. She stared at the photo with hungry eyes. Studying his face. Searching for herself in his features. I have his eyes, she said. Yes, you do. Am I like him in other ways? You're like you. You're your own person. But yes, you have some of his features. She kept looking at the photo, touching it gently. Can I keep this? Of course. She took it to her room. Put it in a special box where she kept her treasures. And I realized she needed this. Needed a face to attach to the absence. Needed to know he was real even if he wasn't present. Over the next few months, something shifted. My daughter became more open about her feelings. More willing to say when she was sad about her father. More comfortable with her reality. I wish I had a daddy, she told me one night. But I'm glad I have you. I'm glad I have you too. Maybe someday he'll come back. Maybe. But even if he doesn't, I'm okay. And she was. Not perfectly. Not without moments of grief and confusion. But fundamentally she was okay. Because she knew she was loved. Knew she had value. Knew that his absence was his failure, not hers. And that knowledge, that foundation, was something I'd fought for. Something I'd built through honesty and presence and unwavering love. The battle had been worth it. Not because justice had been served. Not because he'd faced consequences. But because my daughter knew the truth. And the truth, however painful, was better than the lie he'd tried to live. That was the real victory. Not the court case. Not the conviction. Not the child support. But this. A 5-year-old girl who understood her worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's recognition of it. That was everything. 7 years had passed since I filed that police report. My daughter was now 7 years old, 2nd grade, losing her baby teeth and gaining independence. We were sitting at the kitchen table one evening. Her homework spread out in front of us. Math problems. Simple addition. She was chewing on her pencil, concentrating hard. Done, she announced, showing me her work. Perfect. I'm proud of you. Mama, she said, setting down her pencil. I need to write about my family for school. Can I talk about what happened? With my dad. My heart stopped. What do you want to say? I want to say that my dad wasn't brave enough to be my dad. But that my mom was brave enough to fight for me. Is that okay? I felt tears prick my eyes. Yes, baby. That's more than okay. She went back to writing, her tongue sticking out in concentration, forming careful letters that told our story. Not with bitterness. Not with anger. Just with truth. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone thinking about everything that had happened. 7 years. 7 years since the moment that changed everything. I thought about the woman I'd been. The one who'd sat in a police station with a baby in a stroller, filling out paperwork with shaking hands, wondering if she was doing the right thing. She'd been terrified, sure, drowning in fear and exhaustion and the weight of doing something unprecedented. But she'd done it anyway. And that choice, that single moment of refusing to accept his lies, had changed everything. Not just for us, but for other women who came after. The prosecutor had told me that my case had set a precedent. That false paternity claims were now being taken seriously as criminal matters in our jurisdiction. Other mothers had reached out over the years. Women facing similar situations. Thanking me for showing them it was possible to fight back. To demand accountability. To refuse to be gaslit and manipulated. I'd never set out to be an example. I'd just been trying to protect my daughter. To ensure she knew her father couldn't deny her existence without consequence. But somewhere along the way it had become bigger than just us. My phone buzzed. An email from a law student writing a paper on family law reform. She wanted to interview me about my case and its impact on how courts handle false paternity claims. I'd done a few of these interviews over the years. Always hoping that sharing our story might help someone else. Might change a system that too often let men escape accountability. I responded agreeing to the interview, then set down my phone and walked to my daughter's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her favorite stuffed animal tucked under her arm. She looked so much like him. The same eyes, the same smile. But everything else was her own. Her personality, her spirit, her resilience. She'd never met her father. Probably never would. He'd remained completely absent. No calls. No letters. No attempts at contact. The child support came every month. Automatic. Cold. The only acknowledgement of her existence. And you know what? She was okay. Better than okay. She was thriving. She had friends. Did well in school. Played soccer. Took art classes. Had sleepovers and birthday parties and all the normal experiences of childhood. She asked about her father sometimes. Less frequently now. She'd made peace with his absence in the way children do, accepting it as part of her reality rather than something to be fixed. He's missing out, she'd told me recently. I'm a really cool kid. She was. And he was missing it. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment of watching her become who she was meant to be. That was his loss. His choice. His burden to carry. Not hers. Not anymore. I'd built a life for us. A good life. We had our little house. Routines. Our community. Friends who were like family. His mother who showed up consistently. My mother who visited regularly. We had enough. More than enough. The next morning I made pancakes. Our Saturday tradition. My daughter came into the kitchen still in her pajamas. Hair messy from sleep. Good morning, sunshine. Morning, Mama. She climbed onto her stool at the counter. Can I have chocolate chips in mine? It's Saturday. Of course. As I cooked, she chatted about her plans for the day. Soccer practice. Then Sarah was coming over. Then maybe we could go to the park if it wasn't too hot. Normal. Beautiful. Ordinary. This was what I'd fought for. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not even justice, really. Just this. The ability to give my daughter a childhood filled with love and security and normalcy despite her father's absence. After breakfast, as she was getting ready for soccer, she came to me holding the photo I'd given her years ago. The one of her father. Do you think he ever thinks about me? I don't know, baby. Maybe. Do you think he regrets not knowing me? I hope so. Because you're worth knowing. She nodded, put the photo back in her treasure box. I used to be really sad that he didn't want to be my dad. But now I think I'm okay with it. Yeah. Because if he was here you might not have fought so hard. And I like that you're a fighter. She hugged me quickly and ran off to get her cleats, leaving me standing there with tears streaming down my face. All of it, the police report, the criminal charges, the public judgment, the years of legal battles, had been worth it for that moment. For my daughter understanding that she was worth fighting for. That evening, after soccer and playtime and dinner, we did our bedtime routine. Stories and songs and tucking in. Mama, she said as I was about to turn off the light. Thank you. For what? For being brave. For fighting for me. For loving me enough. Always, baby. Forever and always. She fell asleep smiling, and I stood in her doorway watching her, thinking about what I'd want to say to other women facing what I'd faced. I'd tell them that it's okay to be scared. That fighting back doesn't mean you're vindictive or bitter. That demanding accountability isn't about revenge. It's about teaching your child that truth matters. I'd tell them that the system isn't perfect, but it can work if you're willing to push it. That criminal charges are possible. That false paternity claims are serious. That lying under oath has consequences. I'd tell them that the judgment will be hard. That people will call you names. That his family will defend him. That you'll question yourself constantly. But I'd also tell them that their child is worth it. That years from now, when your daughter looks at you and says, "Thank you for fighting for me," you'll know every battle was justified. I tell them that single motherhood is hard, exhausting, lonely sometimes, but also beautiful and full and enough. I tell them that they're stronger than they think. That survival looks like getting up every day and making breakfast and going to work and reading bedtime stories. That heroism isn't dramatic. It's consistent. And most importantly, I'd tell them that they're not alone. That thousands of women are fighting the same battle. That their courage matters. That their story matters. That by refusing to be silenced, by demanding accountability, by showing their children that truth matters, they're changing the world. One police report at a time. One court case at a time. One brave decision at a time. I closed my daughter's door softly and walked to the kitchen. Made myself tea. Sat at the table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. 7 years. 7 years since the door closed softly on my old life and opened loudly on this one. I wouldn't change anything. Not the pain. Not the struggle. Not the lonely nights or the hard battles. Because all of it led here. To a home filled with love. To a daughter who knew her worth. To a life built on truth and resilience and refusing to accept less than we deserved. That was my legacy. Not the criminal conviction. Not the precedents set. Not even the child support that came every month. But this. A daughter who would grow up knowing that when someone tried to erase her, her mother fought back. That love looks like standing up. That truth matters more than convenience. That you fight for the people you love, no matter what it costs. And that, in the end, is everything.